when the kitten started jumping 6 feet straight up to catch birds mid-flight. Corporal Daniel Foster knew something was very wrong. When the kitten reached 30 pounds at 6 months old and could take down a full-grown rabbit with one strike, Foster realized his mistake. When the veterinarian looked at the cat's ear tufts and said, "This is a caracal. This is a wild African predator. This should not exist in anyone's home," Foster understood he had been living with an apex hunter for half a year, a predator capable of killing animals twice its size, a wild cat that belonged in the deserts of Africa, not in an apartment in North Carolina. This is the story of a Marine who thought he rescued a stray kitten in Jordan, and the day he discovered he had been raising one of nature's most efficient killers. Subscribe right now because what you are about to hear will shock you. Comment what city and country you are watching from. Hit that like button because this story proves that not everything that looks like a kitten is actually a kitten. This is the story of Daniel Foster and Shadow, the caracal who changed everything. Al Jaffer, Jordan, April 2017. Foster was deployed with a Marine logistics unit supporting operations in the Middle East. The base was remote, desert everywhere, heat that made breathing difficult. Foster was 26 years old. From Raleigh, North Carolina. This was his second deployment. He was a vehicle mechanic, spent his days fixing trucks and Humvees, keeping the fleet running. It was monotonous work but important. He had 8 months left on deployment, 8 months until he could go home and forget about sand and heat. April 19th. Foster was working on a truck outside the motor pool when he heard crying, high-pitched, desperate, coming from under a storage container. He looked underneath, saw a tiny kitten, maybe for weeks, old, reddish-brown fur, huge ears, eyes barely open. The kitten was thin, dehydrated, alone. Foster looked around. No mother cat, no other kittens, just this one. He reached under. The kitten hissed weakly. Foster grabbed it carefully, pulled it out into the light. The kitten was in bad shape, ribs showing, covered in dirt, but something about it felt different. The ears were enormous, disproportionate to the head. The paws were huge. The fur had a texture Foster had never seen on a cat, but he was not an expert. It was close enough to a kitten, close enough to save. He brought the kitten to his quarters, set up a box, got water and food from the mess hall. The kitten drank desperately, ate like it had been starving for days. Within an hour, the kitten was stronger, more alert. Foster named him Shadow because of the reddish-brown color that looked dark in certain light. Shadow adapted fast, too. Fast. Within days, he was running around Foster's room, climbing everything, jumping heights that seemed impossible for something so small. Foster thought it was just kitten energy, thought all kittens were like this. He was wrong. 2 weeks in, Shadow had doubled in size. His legs were getting longer. His paws were massive. His ears had tufts of black hair growing from the tips. Foster thought it was a unique breed, maybe something local to the Middle East. Other Marines saw Shadow. Most thought he was cute. A few said he looked weird. One Lance Corporal, who grew up on a farm, said, "That does not look like a normal cat. The proportions are off," Foster said. "He is probably just a mixed breed." The Lance Corporal shrugged, said, "Maybe, but watch him. If he starts acting aggressive, get rid of him." Foster said he would, but he had no intention of getting rid of Shadow. Shadow was the only good thing about this deployment. 1 month in, Shadow was enormous, easily twice the size of a normal kitten his age. He was fast, incredibly fast. Foster would throw a ball and Shadow would catch it midair with reflexes Foster had never seen. Shadow started hunting, not playing, actual hunting. He caught a bird that flew into the room, killed it instantly with 1 bite to the neck. Foster was disturbed. Most cats played with prey. Shadow killed efficiently, professionally, like he had been born to do it. Foster started researching, looked up large cat breeds, found nothing that matched, looked up wild cats, found something that made his blood run cold. Caracals, medium-sized wild cats native to Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia, known for their incredible jumping ability, their large tufted ears, their reddish-brown coats, their skill as hunters. Foster stared at photos of caracals, They looked exactly like Shadow. Foster sat there with his laptop, looking at Shadow sleeping in the corner, realizing what he had. This was not a kitten. This was a wild predator, a caracal, an animal that could jump 10 feet high, that could kill animals much larger than itself, that had no business being in a military base or anyone's home. Foster felt panic rising. What was he supposed to do? He could not just release Shadow. Shadow had been hand-raised. He would not survive in the wild. He could report it, but that meant losing Shadow. That meant possible consequences for keeping a wild animal. Foster decided to do nothing. He would keep Shadow. He would be careful. He would figure it out. That decision was a mistake, because Shadow kept growing and growing. By 3 months, Shadow was 15 pounds of pure muscle. His legs were long and powerful. His ears had prominent black tufts. His coat was sleek and reddish gold. He moved like liquid, fast and silent. He started showing aggression, not toward Foster, but toward anything that moved. He attacked a rat that got into the room, killed it in seconds. Foster watched Shadow eat the rat, watched this wild animal behave exactly like what he was, a predator. Foster knew he was in over his head, but he was also attached. Shadow slept next to him every night, followed him everywhere on base, trusted him completely. Foster could not give him up, even knowing what Shadow was, even knowing how dangerous this could become. Month 5. Foster's deployment was ending in 3 months. He had to make a decision: leave Shadow in Jordan, or bring him home. Leaving Shadow meant almost certain death. Shadow did not know how to survive in the wild. Bringing Shadow home meant smuggling a wild animal across international borders, meant lying on customs forms, meant risking criminal charges. Foster spent weeks agonizing. Then he made his choice. He was bringing Shadow home, no matter what it took. He contacted a military pet relocation service, said he had a cat, sent photos that did not clearly show Shadow's size or features. They said they could arrange transport for $1,000. Foster agreed, paid with savings and credit cards. The process started. Month 6. Shadow was 25 pounds. Massive. His jump height was terrifying. Foster watched Shadow leap from the floor to the top of a 7-foot wall without effort. Watched him catch birds mid-flight. Watched him move with a grace and power that domestic cats did not have. Other Marines started noticing, started asking questions. Foster made excuses, said Shadow was a mixed breed, said he was unusually large but harmless. Most people accepted it, but a few looked suspicious. Foster knew time was running out. He needed to get Shadow off base before someone reported him. The pet relocation service arranged everything. Shadow would fly commercial cargo. Foster would meet him in North Carolina. All Foster had to do was get Shadow to the airport in Ammon. That meant a 3-hour drive through Jordan with a caracal in a carrier. That meant getting through checkpoints. That meant hoping no one looked too closely. Foster sedated Shadow lightly, packed him in a large cat carrier, drove to Ammon with another Marine who thought he was helping transport a pet cat. They reached the airport, got through security. No one checked the carrier closely. Shadow was loaded onto the plane. Foster exhaled. The hard part was done, or so he thought, because bringing Shadow home was just the beginning. The real problems started when Shadow reached full size, and Foster realized he was living with an animal that could kill him. Foster returned to North Carolina 2 weeks before Shadow arrived. He prepared his apartment, bought supplies for a large cat, reinforced furniture, covered anything breakable. He told his roommate, Brian, that he was bringing home a cat from deployment. Brian said, "Cool, I like cats." Foster did not correct him, did not say the cat was actually a 40-pound wild caracal. He would deal with that when Shadow arrived. Shadow landed at Raleigh-Durham International Airport on schedule. Foster picked him up from cargo, opened the carrier in his truck. Shadow stepped out, looked around, saw Foster, made a chirping sound, rubbed against Foster. Foster felt relief. Shadow remembered him. Shadow still trusted him. Foster drove home, brought Shadow into the apartment. Shadow explored cautiously, sniffed everything, climbed furniture, jumped to the top of the refrigerator in one leap. Ryan walked in, saw Shadow, froze, said, "That is not a cat. That is a lynx or something." "What is that?" Foster said. "He is a caracal. I found him in Jordan." Ryan stared, said, "You brought a wild animal into our apartment. Are you insane?" Foster said, "He is tame. He has been with me for 6 months. He is fine." Brian said, "Get that thing out of here or I am calling animal control." Foster said, "Give me a week. If he causes problems, I will rehome him. I promise." Brian reluctantly agreed. 1 week. That week was chaos. Shadow destroyed furniture, knocked over lamps, jumped on counters and cleared everything off. He was too strong, too fast, too wild. Ryan was terrified, refused to be in the same room as Shadow. On day 4, Shadow caught a squirrel that got in through an open window, killed it on the living room floor. Brian lost it, said, "That thing just murdered a squirrel in our apartment. This is done. You have days to get rid of it or I am moving out and reporting you." Foster knew Brian was right. This was not working. Shadow needed space, needed an environment suited for what he was. Foster could not provide that in an apartment. Foster contacted exotic animal sanctuaries, found one in South Carolina called Wild Haven Rescue. They specialized in exotic cats. Foster called, explained the situation. The director, a woman named Lisa Montgomery, said, "You have a caracal in your apartment." Foster said, "Yes, I know. It was stupid. I just need help," Lisa said. "Caracals are not pets. They are wild animals, strong, fast, dangerous. You are lucky he has not hurt anyone yet." Foster said, "He is not aggressive toward me," Lisa said. "Not yet, but he will be. As he matures, his instincts will take over. He will see you as competition or prey. You need to surrender him now before someone gets hurt." Foster said, "What happens if I surrender him?" Lisa said, "We will take him. We have a habitat for caracals. He will live there. You can visit occasionally, but he cannot go back to living with you. This is for his safety and yours." Foster agreed. He had no choice. He brought Shadow to Wild Haven Rescue 3 days later. The facility was impressive. Large enclosures, professional staff, other exotic cats. Lisa met them, looked at Shadow, said, "He is beautiful, healthy. You did a good job keeping him alive. But this is where he belongs now." Foster felt his chest tighten. He had saved Shadow, raised him, loved him. Now he was giving him up. Shadow looked at Foster, chirped. Foster knelt down, said, "I am sorry, buddy. This is better for you. I promise." Lisa took Shadow's carrier, said, "You can visit in a month. Give him time to adjust." Foster nodded, left, cried in his truck for 20 minutes. Foster visited Shadow 1 month later. Shadow was in a large outdoor enclosure, running, jumping, climbing. He looked happy, content, more alive than he ever looked in the apartment. Lisa walked up, said, "He is thriving. He has bonded with another caracal we have. He is behaving like a caracal should." Foster said, "Does he remember me?" Lisa said, "Watch." She called Shadow. Shadow looked over, saw Foster. His ears perked up. He walked to the fence, made that same chirping sound, pressed against the fence. Foster put his hand on the fence. Shadow pressed his face against it. Foster said, "He remembers." Lisa said, "He does. You saved his life. He knows that, but he also knows this is where he belongs. You did the right thing." Foster was not sure if she was right, but he wanted to believe it. Over the next year, Foster visited Shadow regularly, watched him grow into a full adult caracal, 42 pounds of muscle, incredible jumper, efficient hunter. Lisa let Foster into the enclosure a few times. Shadow would approach, let Foster touch him briefly, then go back to being wild. It was bittersweet. Foster had saved Shadow, but Shadow was not his. Shadow belonged to himself, to the wild, to whatever instincts drove him. In 2019, Lisa called Foster, said, "We have an opportunity. There's a conservation program in South Africa. They are reintroducing captive bred caracals into protected reserves. Shadow qualifies. He has the skills, the health, the genetics. If we send him, He could live in the wild, actually wild, not in an enclosure. Foster felt conflicting emotions, pride, grief, relief. He said, "Will he survive?" Lisa said, "We believe so. He has strong hunting instincts. He has been practicing with live prey here. He has the best chance of any caracal we have raised." Foster said, "Do it. Send him home." Shadow was transported to South Africa 3 months later, released in a reserve with other caracals, monitored for 6 months. All reports said he adapted perfectly, hunting successfully, avoiding humans, behaving like a wild caracal. The reintroduction was a success. Foster got updates occasionally, photos from trail cameras. Shadow thriving in his natural habitat. It was everything Foster wanted. But it still hurt. He had saved Shadow, raised him, loved him, and now Shadow was gone, living a life Foster would never be part of. Now, in 2024, Shadow is 7 years old, still alive in South Africa, still wild, still free. Foster is 33, still in North Carolina, still thinks about Shadow. He never got another cat, never. Could Shadow ruined him for normal pets? He volunteers at Wild Haven Rescue now, helps with exotic cats, educates people about why wild animals are not pets, tells his story as a warning. He says, "I saved Shadow's life, but I also made his life harder. If I had left him in Jordan and called local wildlife authorities, he could have been rescued properly, raised with other caracals, reintroduced younger. Instead, I made him dependent on me. I delayed his freedom by years. I thought I was helping. I was just being selfish." People ask Foster if he regrets rescuing Shadow. He says, "I regret how I did it. I regret not knowing better. I regret the mistakes. But I do not regret that Shadow is alive. I do not regret that he is free now. I just wish I had been smart enough to do it right from the start." Shadow taught Foster that love is not the same as ownership, that saving something does not mean keeping it, that sometimes the best thing you can do for a wild animal is let it be wild, even when every instinct tells you to hold on, even when letting go breaks your heart. Shadow is free. That is what matters, even if it cost Foster everything to make it happen. You tell me if that was worth it.